Hey, Pastor Josh here. We're reading Genesis chapter 47 through 57, and Joseph is now second in command to Pharaoh. Nobody can lift their hand or put down their foot unless Joseph says it. He can speak for Pharaoh. That's how much respect Pharaoh has for him. So then we have these 7 plentiful years where there's so much food they don't know what to do with. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of these 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance. So, this is a promise for us to claim in the sense of that God keeps his promises. God told Joseph this would happen. He told Pharaoh this would happen, and it is happening. And in fact, these are the fat cows that was described in the dream. This is the plump ears of wheat that is coming up, and they are storing it up in great abundance. There's so much of it, it's like the sand of the sea until he ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. So these 7 years are just fantastical. They are awesome. There is so much they don't know what to do with. And God is keeping his promise to keep or to give these 7 years of abundance. And in fact, it's so much that it is actually going to be able to sustain them, and not only the Egyptians, but the entire region for the next 7 years when the famine comes to an end. But before the year of the famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God had made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. We're actually going to look at these verses in depth on Mother's Day to look at these 2 children that was born to Joseph and Asenath, and to see it as God's blessing. Indeed, these are children born in the midst of plenty, in poverty, or not in poverty, in much, in goodness, in abundance. So much so that he calls the first one Manasseh, which causes God to forget, which causes Joseph to forget all of his hardships, and that Ephraim, he has become fruitful in the land of his affliction. Even though this is technically an exile for Joseph, Joseph is actually being fruitful in this place. And this birth narrative is actually a hinge. This the hinge on a door. Just like a door turns on a hinge, our stories turn on the story of the famine turns on these verses 50 through 52, the birth of these 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. Everything beforehand, we've been talking about the years of plenty. Then we have the birth of the 2 sons, and then the hinge turns, the door closes, if you will, and then we have the 7 years of famine that begin. And in fact, it's even framed that way. Before the year of famine came, the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end. So right there is your hinge, and we're going to look at that more in depth on Mother's Day in honor of in honor of our mothers, in honor of the very act of giving birth, in different things that we can look into that. So I'm looking forward to that. But the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come as Joseph had said. God told him, God kept his promise, and there it is. And actually, Joseph is going to be seen as a true prophet, because if it didn't happen, they would have said, well, what's this guy up to? So there's a famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread, because nobody else was saving. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says to you, do. What amazing. He's delegating the whole problem. You just go to him, and he'll give you whatever you need to do. I entrusted him with this, and he's going to take care of it. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain because the famine was severe over all the earth. So here it is, the entire earth, everybody is coming to Egypt to get grain. That's an attitude we need to adopt, is that God will use us to bless other people. God will use us to even bring salvation. When I say us, I'm talking about Christians. I'm talking about the people of God. Now here is also something else that Moses, as he wrote this and put it together, he's going to want us to pay attention to this verse 57. All the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain. Well, what other person in Genesis did the whole earth come to receive salvation? And actually, let me help you out a little bit. It wouldn't have been the people, but it would have been the animals. This is Noah, right? So Noah is there in the early part of the book of Genesis. He's got his ark. The animals are being brought to him for salvation, to be saved, to make it through the flood. And now we have Joseph, and we have all the earth, except this time it's people coming to Joseph to buy grain, to survive, to live. So in a sense, Joseph in Egypt, this is another ark story. This is another Noah's Ark story, a salvation story where everybody's going to come and they're going to be saved by the faithfulness of God's chosen one, God's person. So Joseph is the chosen one, and he is saving everybody by keeping all the grain. Noah was God's chosen one, and he saved those that would get into the boat, which only ended up being his family and the animals, and saved them through the great flood. So Noah saves them through the great flood, and Joseph saves them through this great famine. I hope that's been a blessing to you. I'll see you all in the next video.